in the sense that no matter it always seems to be, it's hard to learn. Poorly maintained and sports a navigation system that seems to take pride in putting things that seems to take pride in and sports a navigation system that seems to take pride in putting things where you. And that's going to be our design focus. The subtleties of designing a navigation for a company. Although this will initially start like a pretty down-to-earth reason. Like my last video, Sibelius has a particularly unique ability to drive. Sibelius has a particularly unique ability to drive me actually insane. So I'll keep it together as long as I can, but don't be surprised if I go slightly off. But don't be surprised if I go slightly off the rails at some point. You have been warned. So you have been warned. So in case you're new to this channel, I'm a composer. Since it's got some genius functionality in there, that I make use of on a daily basis, but which is obstructed from flourishing by its bafflingly haphazard design. So what's wrong with it? So what's wrong with it? And how did it get this way? So Sibelius was created by twin brothers Ben and Jonathan Finn. That's them there outside King's College at Cambridge, where they grew up. At the age of 17, they began working on a software engraving tool as a side project, which with encouragement from the composer Peter Maxwell Davies, they decided to publish under the company name Sibelius. Sibelius software. The homage to the famous Finnish composer Jean Sibelius was chosen as a sort of oblique play on Jean Sibelius. Was chosen as a sort of I mean why not? When released, it began to spread through word of mouth to composers throughout Britain, many of whom were trying out this type of software for the first time. It was originally created to work on the Acorn computer, which had become popular in the education space. Something that would become a competitive advantage for Sibelius. Something that would become a competitive advantage for Sibelius. For Sibelius later on. Its rivals at the time included Score. Score, where you had to type rows of pitches and time values into a DOS-like interface in where you had to type rows of pitches and time values into a DOS in order to see a visual where you had to type rows of pitches and time values into a DOS-like interface in order to see a visual result, which was massively time-consuming, and another program, Finale, which is still being used today, but which isn't very good. And so Sibelius, due to being comparatively easy to use and but which isn't very good. And so Sibelius, due to being comparatively easy to use and filled with superior features, became the dominant notation software. Quite an accomplishment for a pair of obscure first-time developers. Accomplishment for a pair of obscure first-time developers. Quite an accomplishment for a pair. Quite an accomplishment for a pair of obscure first-time developers. However, over time, the application became more complicated, and as features began to multiply, the existing navigation expanded, and the sheer number of buttons and menus became overwhelming. As the long-time Sibelius employee Daniel Spreadbury observed, Sibelius has become a very sophisticated program with many hundreds. So to try and solve this problem, Sibelius looked to another creation app which had faced a similar build-up of functionality. Microsoft Word. Here's a clip of the designer Jensen Harris, who worked on Word for Here's a clip of the designer Jensen Harris, who worked on Word for years, describing the problems they faced while designing it.
We added new features to the product every version, but honestly, hardly anyone found one word we found started being talked about with Office. Every time the press wrote a story about Office, and that word one word we found started being talked about with Office. Every time the press wrote a story about Office, and that word was bloat. And that word was bloat.
He then goes on to describe how they began trying to reduce complexity on the screen.
And so the first of the features that we did to reduce the perception of bloat was something called IntelliMenus. Instead of actually reducing the complexity of the product, well, we could hide some of it from you. So what we do is we would take So what we do is we would take a random set of menu items and we would hide them. And we would hide them. Hide them.
Which turned out to be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, since people don't tend to click on options they can't. Since people don't tend to click on options they can't see. Since people don't tend to click on options they can't see right in front of them. So we'll come back to this in a minute. Let's get back to Sibelius Software, who, to complicate matters during the development of Sibelius 6, sold it to the development of Sibelius 6, sold it to the American multimedia company Avid. Avid are a very mixed bag. On the one hand, you have their flagship app Media On the one hand, you have their flagship app Media Composer, which is an unpleasant, power-hungry beast of an editing application that only runs on that is, if you can figure out how its controls work. And on the other hand, you have Pro Tools, a solid, easy-to-use audio workstation that Avid bought in 1993. And so, under this new ownership, Sibelius 6 gave way to Sibelius 7, where Sibelius 7, where Okay, before I go any further discussing the design of Sibelius 7, it is tempting to lay the blame for the bad parts solidly at Okay, before I go any further discussing the design of Sibelius 7, it is tempting to lay the blame for the bad parts solidly at Avid's door, but I think we need to be careful not to buy into that narrative too much, since the Sibelius design team were largely in place when were largely in place when 7 came out, and some of its oldest designers were pretty vocal in defending it. So what did they do? Well, let's again return to Jensen Harris to hear how they tackled this problem with Microsoft Word, which was to create a new design pattern called the ribbon. The ribbon, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The idea of the ribbon is not just to make stuff easier to find, but also to give a good indication of what the feature in question will actually do before you click on it.
We also have something throughout the UI which is called live preview. We also have something throughout the UI which is called live preview, which says that any time you hover over a formatting choice, will show a formatting choice, will show you exactly what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is use the position gallery, which again just shows you the most common places that people want to most common places that people want to put pictures in places that people want to put pictures in their documents. I'll split the text into columns. I'll just choose columns. Text into columns. I'll just choose columns, not 2. I'll just choose columns, not 2. I'll just choose columns, not 2.
And to go a little bit beyond this presentation, let's have a look at the improvements that led us to where the ribbon is today. This is Word Online, where the visuals have been further decluttered and where options still give a clear visual indication of what's going to happen when you click on them. Not to mention, they now have a search function, which can be a nice way of asking the program to initiate a command like spell checking without needing to find the button in question. Notice also that the labels are pretty clear. Insert. That's where you insert things. Layout. That's where you see insert things. Layout. That's where you see layout. That's where you see options for margins and space. Where you see options for margins. That's where you see options for margins and spacing and stuff. This is what the ribbon is meant to be. Clear and easy to use. Now when Sibelius licensed the ribbon pattern from Microsoft, they got a lot of criticism for it, with the general attitude being that it was the wrong system to use. My own feeling is that the ribbon was a perfectly fine choice, but that Sibelius made really terrible use of it. And by not designing the ribbon well, it's had a knock-on effect on other parts of the app too. The best way to illustrate all of this is to see it in context. The best way to illustrate all of this is to see it in context. So let's imagine ourselves to be a first-time user trying to achieve something. I'm using version 8, by the way, but the navigation is nearly identical to 7. Okay. Are you ready? Okay. Are you ready for the pain? So after you've loaded up the app, you're presented with a bunch of presets, and right off the bat there's a slightly absurd visual contradiction. A category titled No Category. This contains the only option anyone actually cares about, blank page. Or if not, you can scroll through the other 66 presets to find what you want. By the way, I noticed solo piano is the very last option. By the way, I noticed solo piano is the very last. By the way, I noticed solo piano is the very last option. Really? Solo piano gets bottom billing below mariachi band and lute tablature? Well, okay. And then in the spot where most apps have a create or confirm button, they've opted comically for quit. I just love this. It's as if they're saying, you've already seen the no category thing. Trust us, it only goes downhill from here. You've already seen the no category thing. Trust us, it only goes down. You've already trust us, it only. So anyway, you click on blank page, ignore the presets. I mean, that's what everyone does, right? I mean, if there's anyone out, I mean, that's. I mean, if there's anyone out there who actually bothers with the screen, could you? Could you let me know? So then you go down. Oh, oops! Almost got. So then you go down. Oh, oops! So then you go down. Oh, oops, almost got me. Okay, let's just do a little design pass. Yeah, whoop. Whoop, up you go. Up you go. Whoop, up you go. Yeah, whoop, up you go. These exist already. Let's get rid of those. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, that'll do fine. Okay. Now we're brought to the Home tab. So, with the ribbon design, Home is meant to be where you find the core actions. Home is meant to be where you find the core actions people use all the time. You know, in Word, that would be things. In Word, that would be things like font size, styling, etc. Size, styling, etc. etc. In Sibelius, I think there are only about 4 functionalities. In Sibelius, I think there are only about 4 functionalities, along with the smattering of random stuff that would be better suited elsewhere. You'll see what I mean in a second. So if we want to make music, we need some instruments, right? Well, thankfully, that at least is here in the Home tab, where it should be. Although I always have to double check to make sure it's the right button, because the trumpet keeps throwing me and the incomplete title add or remove requires a pause to understand. Add, remove what? Oh, I guess it says instruments down there to the right, but but that's not really how eyes work. Okay, considering that this might be the most important button in the app, let's call it add or remove instrument. I think it deserves the space. You know, you've got a button over here called revoice chord diagram, and because it looks a little bit like an add remove let's make it generic by changing the icon to a let's make like everyone else does. Okay, so let's choose, and now we're faced with this eyesore. This is the real heart. Endless. And even though this is one of the better ones, the sloppy attention. So the idea is you choose instruments from here and put them here to add them to here to add them to your score. And because the list is so big, they gave us a search bar. That's useful. So let's find a cello. Really? You can't locate cello. Oh, I guess I need to remember the full name. Violoncello that no one uses. Okay. Well, let's. Oh, that's helpful. We've all this space available to us, but the drop down is teeny, so we can't see what the options are. You're on version 8 and you haven't. But even if it had been big enough, you still wouldn't have been able to find a use, because putting in guitar isn't enough to get. You need to actually type acoustic or electric first, because this is search from the early 90s. Can I have that quit Sibelius button back, please? Oh, thank you. Can I have that quit Sibelius button back, please? Oh, thank you. Can I have that quit Sibelius button back, please? Oh, thank you. So, let's add a piano to the score. Now, understanding what each of the elements does is a little bit of a... For example, the add button relates to this, but the delete button... And look at the tick box all the way down here. Small. And look at the tick staff. Okay, you select it. You select it and get 0 feedback. And after clicking around a bit, you realize that it's contextual, either on or off for the instrument you've selected. Okay, a little design fix for free. When you click on the instrument, just put the tick box here. So let's add a stave to the piano. Oh, look. I can't delete it now. It's busted. Anyway, now we have our instruments. So a typical next step might be to set a tempo marking. Tempo is pretty important. So it should be pretty important. So it should be in home, right? Right? Nope. No, you need Nope. No, you need to navigate to a tab called Text. That's intuitive. Then you need to look in a drop-down titled Styles. And when you do that, so it should be in Home, right? Be in Home, right? Nope. No, you need to navigate to a tab called Text. Text. That's intuitive. Then you need to look in a drop-down titled Styles. And when you styles. And when you do that, you see there's a then you need to look in a drop down entitled styles. And when you do that, you see there's a whole range of things in here, different types of markings. Techniques, expressions. Oh, I get it. All these things are written as text. That's why they're being categorized that way. Even though some of them don't contain text. Oh, And I love how there's a category called common. Yet, before you open it, they only show the first two options. Hey guys, hey guys, I'm fairly certain tempo is more common than I'm fairly certain tempo is more common than the direct. But as if that wasn't painful enough, what's coming up next is just pure madness, and any first-time user would be forgiven for completely losing the plot here. So you click on tempo, and your arrow turns a nearly indistinguishable shade of blue, which, when you finally notice it, indicates that something's going to happen. Okay, so let's click with our special blue arrow. Right. 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 Okay, it wants us to enter text. Oh, I get it. Now we type tempo equals 120. Tempo equals 120 or something. Oh, equals 120 or something. Oh, it's not. It's not working. And our note duration is missing. So here's what you should have done. You need to click the drop down, pick the tempo, click with the special blue arrow, see the insertion point, and then right click to trigger a mass right click to trigger a massive drop down containing a bazillion options, and there we go. The word tempo. Right. So we click on that and finally, oh man, the note value still isn't there. No, you need to now right click again, open up the ludicrously large, select the note value, and then finally type your tempo. Oh, and by the way, it's really easy to accidentally deselect this whole thing, so you may worthy of Finlandia. Okay. Finlandia. Okay, let's do a... How about you go to home where a vital function like tempo should be, and when you select you get a ghost beside your cursor, which you can place and edit. But this type of fix doesn't repair the larger structural issues, which is the... For example, there's a category called Note Input. Note Input, which, apart from one or two specific input type functions, contains options that could just as easily belong in the next category called contains options that could just as easily belong in the next category called Notations. This takes a long time to learn, especially since each one is maxed out with unnecessary detail. So for those who say the ribbon was a bad choice, I'm not really... So for those who say I'm not really in agreement because this isn't how a ribbon is meant to work. It's just a higgledy-piggledy launchpad for ever more horrendous pop-ups. I mean, look at this one. What on earth does this do? Oh, my head is beginning to hurt. I mean, look at this. Look at this category called Layout. It's definitely the most appropriately named, but which is undermined by the next one called Appearance. Layout and Appearance. You want to edit the staff spacing because it says staff spacing there. Then you have to click on this eensy little button to get a monster terminal called Engraving Rules. Called Engraving. Yeah. What? Yeah. What? Yeah. What? And then there's what? 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 And then there's hundreds. Yeah, what? And yeah, what? And then yeah, what? And then there's hundreds of disparate settings with no visual cues to help you. Hundreds of disparate settings with no visual cues to. It's just a parameter dump perpetrated by some dev who probably assumed that a designer would clean it up at some point in the future. Using it is an absolute nightmare. Trust me, even Finale with all its problems and it's got many does a better job of this, at least giving you some indication of what's going to happen. But even if they included this information, you'll still find that the thing you want is in some other dialog box. I mean, let's just move over to the Appearance tab and click the ENC Design and Position button, and oh no! What about instrument names? Oh no!